There we go. Hi, video 893. Uh, Doing kind of a couple videos back to back. Usually that means there's a lot going on, right? Uh, yeah. We're talk a little bit today. Well, my daughter, she's home from school on winter break, and I wanted to kind of take her out and air her out. I work from home, and so I haven't been out of the house, and just kind of a fun treat. Get some coffee and go for a drive. And we drove to a city, uh, about 40-minute drive. A very nice, kind of probably was a city in Indiana that has a lot of an old like downtown. The downtown buildings. There's no building over 3 stories tall, and they all kind of have old storefronts, and they have a town square, that's decorated for Christmas. It's just a nice little fun drive. And you know, between here and there, pass through several little Indiana towns. One stoplight towns basically. And as I was driving, I noticed that there are a number of buildings that you can tell were made at different time periods. You know, I couldn't tell you now. The oldest building was like 1891. Okay, I mean, but structures. I only know that because we were in downtown and there was a building that had a cornerstone. Da 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 Indiana. Founded 1891. You know, but there were other structures. That 200 years. 200 years less. Well, 1891's what, 100 years. So okay, I guess not super old, but anyway. But a number of the buildings that we passed, some of them were churches. You know, First United Methodist Church of blah blah blah. Or Christian Light. Jesus is Light, or there were a lot of churches, a lot of Christian churches that we passed that were like dilapidated. Some of the times when you're driving, you'll see a barn or something, and it's falling apart, it's caved in. you know a structure that at one time was new and used, like a barn. That just you'll see, like a farm or something that was sold, and maybe part of it they built like a housing community, and there's still these structures that are on the land, that are falling apart. I guess they get bulldozed maybe for the next part of the subdivision that gets built or whatnot. But for the moment, you just have this old ruin, for lack of a better word. You know, and it kind of dawned on me somewhat that at one time, um, these buildings, these churches, they were probably built. A group of people got together and decided they wanted to build a church, and it was a new building, at the time that it was created, you know, nice, new, fresh built, protect you from the elements, gather and whatever at that time. But since then, you know, much like the barn that's collapsing, you know, it disbanded. The people left it, you know, and it's almost the equivalent to me, somewhat of a skeleton, you know, an animal that dies, a carcass, and the soft tissue, you know, gets decomposes, and you have the skeleton, the bones. You know, these older buildings are kind of relics. They're ruins. They're uh, almost what would be fossils. If you looking back at a period of time. But at one time they were, very popular. You uh, we think about like Stonehenge. We look at Stonehenge today, and it's We know it's an astrological clock. If you're there at the right time of year, the sun is at a certain point. It's a timepiece. But the way that Stonehenge and other circles like it, historically, there was a large wooden structure that was also inclusive, and a whole community. They found artifacts and proof that there were houses, and it was a village around Stonehenge. People, because of the significance of it, a whole city civilization around it, that of course now is gone, right? If you look at a picture of Stonehenge, I mean, they're building a highway near it now. Actually, they're building a tunnel. But as a relic of the past, you know. And I guess I've thought a lot about this week. Um, Someone had posted something, the equivalent of a Christmas. Jesus is the reason for the season. Um, and you know, there's somewhat of a thing we have right now where I'm sorry, it's taking me a while to get to this point. I will have a point, I promise you. Uh, an idea about transgender people, that against transgender people, against children, you know, denying access to care for transgender children, denying, drag queen shows is the current hot topic. We have armed men, groups of armed men showing up in Kevlar body armor with assault rifles and gas masks and band-aid, covering who their identity, to protest drag queen shows. Okay. You know, as sort of this anti-trans, I'm going to say gender diversity, or LGBTQ, don't say gay. People feel like the gay community is indoctrinating what they call, or grooming, children, sort of a thing. But I think about these relics of the past, these churches, and the community that at one point was probably very vibrant, and a group of people who, um, you know, took a Bible, or this is a Warhammer 40K book, but they had their book of, God says, da 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 da, da, homosexuality is wrong, or da da da, all this other stuff, and they quoted it, and your Bible thumpers, your preachers or whatnot, as a way of justifying their hatred and discrimination and bullying of LGBTQ folks. Okay. But here you have this physical relic in your world, this church, this old building that's falling apart because of lack of use. And I'm wondering, 100 years from now, 50 years from now, when people look back and they see, let's say, being a little forward looking here, let's say that 50 years from now, um, non binary and gender diverse people will be as accepted as we accept interracial children today. Okay. People, you've grown adults, who are from interracially, racially mixed couples. Okay. People who can be in either community. You have people that are interracial couples, children of interracial couples who, uh, may not have skin dark enough. They can pass as, let's say, white, you know. Or you might have a child of Asian American descent that looks nothing like their Japanese parent, or their Chinese parent, or their Korean parent, but they're Korean American, you know. Um, you know, if we could think about this future society, at that time, being accepted of transgender and gender diverse, non binary as accepting then as we accept interracial kids today. You know, back when I was in high school, early college, like I said, I've quoted this before, the movie Jungle Fever came out and it was, a black man and a white woman in a relationship. And it was controversial at the time, you know, and people freaked out and they did the same thing. They grabbed their Bibles and said, God is against da 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 da. Well, we would look at such a thing today as being moronic, right? Stupid, idiotic. Even though there are people who still do, racial purity. I mean, you still have that hatred and discrimination and bullying. I mean, that's still out there, obviously, and probably will always be out there because people like to have the other. We're okay, I'm okay, you're okay because we're together, but that other person, they're the trouble. Let's blame them. Grab your torch and your pitchfork. Um, but again, I see these relics, these skeletons, these architectural ruins today that 40, 50 years ago, I mean, these people had to get together and, buy the lumber and secure the property and build this church. I mean, some of them are made out of bricks. I mean, there's a number of churches where I live in, near Louisville that are defunct, and they turn it into a restaurant or something else. But it's again, it's a sign that something that can be held so vibrantly, something that can be held, concrete that can build this structure and time passes and the people are gone, either they passed away or they broke up or they went their separate ways and we have that relic of the past. We have that fossil, that architectural, that ruin, that building maybe gets used for something else. But I mean, in these cases, like I said, the barns that are falling over, you wouldn't want to put anything in there. It's a uh, whatnot. But again, as we were driving today, I thought about some of the things maybe that today are hot button issues. You know, 50, 60 years from now, they may not be. And it makes me wonder what the next thing will be. You know, yes, there will always be people who, there are people in politics who try to keep women out, women down, ethnic minorities down, Mexicans, immigrants, demonize them, and gay people and trans. I mean, there's always going to be something, but I just don't know what the next. And I jokingly say it's, people that are born on the moon or from Mars, 200 years from now when we have a community on the moon or on Mars and people are breeding and you're going to have actual Martians, you know, and that'll be something that people here could start to hate, or people there start to hate Terrans, people from Earth, people from Earth are so unsophisticated or, they're so stuck in their old ways, we here at Mars, all of those things, it just, you just have to just wonder, but back in the present moment, all of the things that maybe are kind of disturbing or that gives us stress here, especially if you're in the gender diverse trans community. Um, you know, the end is in sight. You know what I mean? It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. This last week they passed a law about same-sex marriage, and it didn't make it legal everywhere. Okay, it wasn't as good as it could have been, but it was a huge step forward. And 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you're going to have people that were used to gay marriage being nothing special or unique about it. It's acceptable, da 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 da. And so that's going to make something like the Equality Act much more easier to swallow, in the same way that biracial children today, you wouldn't treat a biracial kid differently because they're biracial. We're going to reach a point, I hope, knock on wood or whatever, that uh, society reaches a point where we treat, gender diverse children with as much love and understanding and compassion as we do everybody else. You know what I mean? That's my hope. And I think it'll happen. It'll just take some time. But this last week was a huge step forward. Even though it wasn't as good as it could have been, there's more work to be done. It's just a matter of time, I think. Um, and we had a thing on Friday at work. We have a Microsoft Teams internal chat, and someone posted something about, I believe it's in Virginia, at the Virginia State Capitol. They have a menorah and they have a Christmas tree, and the Satanist church put a display up, and it's every year, people complain about it, and it's not right, it doesn't belong there, blah 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 blah, and this year, um, it was like nothing special, you know. Well, why wouldn't you include someone else's religious beliefs? Whereas uh, the person who poo-pooed it, Jesus is the reason for the season, they're probably, there's a minority of people who would agree with that statement, but there's more people who would disagree with that statement, you know. Growing up for me, it was the flip side, you know. Or you had a majority of people in the middle who don't give a shit one way or the other, and they would just side with the Christians, you know, as far as only believing in Jesus, da 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 da. And nowadays, it's like, no, it's diversity. If you gotta respect Jewish people, and you gotta respect Kwanzaa, and I made a comment about, well, where's the Festivus poll, and five people laughed at it and posted things about what they like about Festivus. So diversity and inclusion, like I said, our society has changed. I know it's not happening as quickly as we would like, but I'm hoping that uh, again, inclusion, diversity, and knowledge. You can't stop progress. You can definitely try to contain it, but if you think about the current society and the access that we have to information, I know this is tissues, this isn't a smartphone, but we have these electronic devices, these smartphones that are connected to information, and we didn't have that 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, right? The kids today, and by that I mean 18, okay, 18 and younger, right? Even kids in middle school have access to so much information, which I guess is why some groups want to control it, right? Ban it, banning books and whatnot, but they don't realize that, okay, so at my local library, you're going to take away this book, but then I can go on the internet, you know, hang on. Ah, I didn't prepare for this. Okay. But then I can go on the internet and find these other books. You know what I mean? It's like these the people, the old people, that's the only way I could say it. the baby boomers and before, they're like, oh, we'll just ban the book and the children will never see it, but they don't realize that on their phones they can look at all this other, you know, there's likely a PDF of every banned book. Catcher in the Rye, check. Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret, check. Queer Like Me, I Am Jazz. All of this LGBTQ literature. It's on the web. You know what I mean? And you can get whatever banned book as a PDF. You know, eh, that's um, you know the people, like I said, right now that are trying to like quell that progress. They don't realize that the genie is already out of the bottle. You and plus, if you ban something, I mean, I don't know about you, but if you tell me I can't do something, guess what I want to do? I mean, I just have that spiteful, you know, don't push the button. Ooh, really? Why? What'll happen? Uh, so anyway, but I don't know. That's kind of my video. Like I said, I was driving and I saw these dilapidated buildings, and some of them were churches, and I was like, at one time they must have been, the shit. They must have been the thing, and they had this dogma philosophy that built that, and then the people are gone, and views changed, and again, you have people who have access to other things, and they're like, you know, I don't know. Here, we'll do Irish. There you go. All these other things, and they start to think for themselves, and something that is so myopic, especially if it's wrong, something that's restrictive. Uh, no wonder it's dilapidated, right? But that doesn't mean you're not going to have a political party or whatnot that's going to embrace it, you know. And I guess maybe the older you get, the more you start to hear the rhetoric of, at least in my generation, the Republican conservative. It's always the same. Uh, you hear the same excuses. We're not going to take care of the poor people. We need to blame it on the immigrants, and we need God back in school, and prayer in school is what we need. And, nowadays you have this huge population that's like bullshit, for lack of a better word. They're calling it, you know. And 40 years ago, you would have other people who would join up and believe in the bullshit. Nowadays, it's flipped. It's like, no, we're not gonna, we're embracing inclusion and diversity. And I'll end on that note. As I was driving to a D&D game last night, I saw it was the new pride flag, the one with the triangle, the diamond, the trans, and then and it says something like all are welcome. And um, that idea, all are welcome. I think that needs to be, uh, you know, at least that's kind of going to become my mantra, or my thing is all are welcome. You know, the moment that you say you're not welcome here, I think we have a problem. And I think, again, you've got a subset, and sorry, I said I would shut up, but you have inclusive Christian churches, okay? And if you can be a good Christian, follow Jesus, and include gay people, Okay. Uh, this minority that doesn't is going to increasingly get smaller and smaller and smaller. That's not to say you're not going to have, I mean, you look at the Orthodox, the Greek Orthodox Church, I mean, very strict, or even, really hardcore Jewish, Orthodox Jews. You're still going to have people because it's their choice, it's what they want to do. But it's going to be this ever diminishing fragment, you know. So anyway, salad bar is open. Take what you want, leave it away. The future is po folks, right? The oh golly, remember po folks? Ah, go to a po folks restaurant and get whatever the hell you want. Well, almost everything, but having that information. So I'm optimistic for the future. I don't know if I'll see it or not, but I am optimistic for the future. So on that note, I will shut up and wish you the best of luck in becoming your authentic self as you define it. Oh, can I do one more PS? Will you mind if I don't give one more PS? Was chatting with a friend this week, who's undergoing a lot of stress, and they're in their 70s, um, and they're questioning. I don't. I mean, I'm not going to give anything away, but it's something like, "Well, I'm too old to transition," which I can respect. I mean, I'm not trying to change anybody's way. But something that I had said to them, which I guess I want to share with you, obviously, is, you know, my mindset was made in the 70s. Okay, I grew up in 19. I was born in 1972, so my programming is like 1970s, and then the 80s is probably my decade of choice where I grew up. Okay, and obviously they're older than I am, so they're before that. So their decade could be the 50s or the 60s. Okay. Um, and so our mental constructs that we got brainwashed, that we got programmed with in the old days and before my time, which is the really old days, I'm gonna say, um, there was definitely a binary system. There was a gender binary system. You know, you were either male or female. Okay. And what I had said to my friend was, I said, in the day that we live in today, 2022 and beyond, that system is becoming less and less a thing. You know, we have gender diversity, we have trans masculinity, we have trans femininity, we have, it's not just a spectrum. I mean, it's a spectrum in three dimensions. Okay, it's not a linear thing. There's three-dimensional sphere, if you will. Okay. And so I kind of said to them that, uh, if you, I used a nautical and not a nautical analogy. I said, if you give yourself enough rope that you moor your boat to the dock, as the tide comes in and goes out, your boat will rise and fall with the tide, and it will always be safe and secure because it is tied to something stability, the dock. Um, and I think that's something for everybody, for anybody, no matter how old you are, is if you give yourself enough flexibility, you will be able to rise up and down with the tide, as we feel it. There have been times in my life my gender dysphoria was so strong. There were times in my life I could ignore it or thought I could. Um, you know, uh, Give yourself that freedom if you can. They say dance to your own drum. That when it comes to ourselves and the level that we feel comfortable with, there is no wrong tune. It is your tune. You are the navigator of your own ship and where you decide to go. You know, whatever is right for you, wherever it takes you, and whatever pace you want to sail at. And who knows, you may end up somewhere that you didn't think you would be. It's totally up to you. It's you are in command. I know it doesn't seem like that sometimes, but you are the captain of your own ship. Uh, and I hope that again, you give yourself that latitude if you can to discover for yourself what you want to be, and and you know I think from their perspective, and I know mine before, it was a binary situation. It had to be one or the other. And I think that model is just no longer valid. You know, it's definitely going to take a while for society to catch up to that. I do think in the future, in the not too far future, and maybe I should just go ahead and buy it. But in the future, I think we're all going to have those things you see at conventions. They're like not a lanyard, but something kind of like a lanyard you wear around your neck, but it's two strings. I think we're all gonna have these someday, and maybe we should just say fuck it and start to do it. It'll have our name and our pronouns underneath. Okay, I think we all will. I really do. I mean, high tech. Maybe in the future, um, our smart our watches will have. It'll pick up the identifier, and maybe you'll walk up to someone if they have it. Of course, be totally optional. But you'll check your watch when you see somebody, and they'll send their signal to you, and you'll know their name and their pronouns. And um, that way you'll treat everybody. We won't assume. We won't assume. I've already lost it. We won't assume that this means girl. Okay, we won't assume that. Or this means boy. Okay. Uh, I think about the fashion shows that we see with the idea of fashion, and you'll see people wearing garbage bags with umbrellas on their heads and something really kind of funky, and you're weird, and you're like, that's so weird, that's so nouveau fashion. That funkiness, you know 30, 40, 50 years from now, that may come true. And it will just, those of us who want to be uh, accommodating and friendly, we may ask out of curiosity, how may I address you? How would you like to be addressed? How about that? That may become the new greeting when we meet someone for the first time. Hello, it's nice to meet you. My name is Karen. My pronouns are she, hers. What would you like me to call you? How may I address you? That may be the new handshake. Can you imagine doing that, going into a job interview, and that being, you know, one of the questions they ask you? Wouldn't that be wonderful? I mean, it might be. It might be. We still have a long time to get over that instant assumption. And of course, my generation, where I am, that's the world I live in. I didn't transition to not be she, her, but I can definitely be courteous and aware and be proactive and ask someone, you know, and what is your name? What pronouns? How would you like to be addressed? You know what I mean? Food for thought. All right. As I Now I will shut up. Till next time.